One category of gear that got completely redefined in the world of filmmaking is the wireless microphone. If someone were to ask today for a wireless microphone for video, what they have in mind is probably one of these compact 2.4 GHz systems. But just back in the early 2010s, not terribly far in the past, if you said you needed a wireless mic for video, then it could only have been a UHF system. Even for consumers or this college kid looking to make YouTube videos, you would still be looking at the same UHF systems the professionals were using because it was the only option available. Fortunately today, we do now have very consumer-friendly and full-featured 2.4 GHz mic systems from brands like Saramonic, but UHF systems have still held their relevance in the pro market. Here I've got two of Saramonic's latest wireless mic systems, the Saramonic Air, which is a 2.4 GHz system, and this very full-fledged Saramonic K9 is a UHF system. So they're from the same manufacturer, released only about 2 months apart, but representing two different subcategories of wireless microphones. With the K9 and Air from Saramonic, I'll be talking about what the key differences are between a 2.4 GHz system and UHF system, which might hopefully help you decide which system is better suited for your needs. The first difference is a legal issue. Not every UHF frequency is legal for us to transmit on. Governments reserve certain frequencies for things like broadcast or cellular networks, so it would be straight up illegal to be running wireless mics on those frequencies. And the really tricky thing about this is, these allocations are different depending on region. 2.4 GHz, on the other hand, is safe to operate on internationally as a license-free band, and that's a huge contributor to these 2.4 GHz mics being so popular. Imagine you're making wireless microphones to be sold internationally. If they happen to be running on UHF, then you would have to release many different versions operating on different frequency bands in order to cater for each region. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, I was the owner of a set of UHF mics made by a German audio brand, and the exact frequency range of the set I happen to own happened to get reclaimed by the government for 4G cellular network in 2018. So suddenly, my only set of wireless microphones became illegal to use. I had to spend another $1,000 to buy another set, but don't let my story scare you today away from UHF mics, because Saramonic has a really smart solution for exactly that on the K9. When you set up a new pair of K9s using the Saramonic System app, it uses your current location to activate the correct legal frequencies on your K9 according to where you're using it. So that takes care of arguably the trickiest thing about buying into UHF systems. But why then is it worth going for UHF when 2.4 GHz is available? Well, the thing about 2.4 GHz being license-free is you'll find a lot of other things transmitting on that spectrum. That means it's easier to find yourself in a situation where you might encounter interference when using a 2.4 GHz mic system. If you're using it at a busy event like a trade show where there's a ton of mobile phones around you, there's 50 different Wi-Fi networks in the air, then the effective range of your 2.4 GHz wireless mic might be shorter. If you're on a UHF system, it's less likely that you'll encounter dropouts. UHF systems also tend to perform better at longer ranges compared to 2.4 GHz systems. That's just a physical advantage of UHF having longer wavelengths, which also translates to UHF systems being better at penetrating obstacles. Proof that I was on UHF was coming from this to there. So if you don't see yourself using a wireless mic in congested locations radio-wise, and the receiver's just gonna be on a nearby camera, which you're presenting to, like right now the Saramonic Air is transmitting to this camera, then a system like the Saramonic Air is going to do perfectly fine. However, if you are covering large-scale events or need long-range transmission, you might want to consider a system like the K9 instead. The two systems are also quite different in the way they're set up when miking up a talent. On most of these compact 2.4 GHz systems, there's a mic built into the transmitter. Here on the Saramonic Air, there's a mic on the top of the unit. That's what you're listening to right now. It's a very good quality mic they've built into this, and it's super quick to set up. There's no cables, no antennas, just clip it onto your shirt or use the magnet clip, and it's ready to go. You can dim or turn off the LED indicators on it to make it visually more low profile, but low profile might not be enough when it comes to film productions or commercials. For those use cases, the mic needs to be completely invisible, which is why the K9, like most UHF systems, are designed exclusively to be used as a belt pack or body pack transmitter. You would tuck the transmitter out of view and run a lavalier microphone into it, which is much easier to conceal. The lav mics supplied by Saramonic with the K9 are also remarkably tiny, just barely thicker than the cable itself, which is amazing if you don't want the mic to be seen. Though something very versatile on the Saramonic Air is it can also be used as a belt pack transmitter because it does ship with lavalier microphones, which you can plug into the transmitters. This uses a proprietary connector to keep the size small, but at least you do get both an internal and external mic option on the Air. The batteries for the Saramonic Air are built into the unit and they're charged via pogo pins using the supplied charging case. The K9, on the other hand, has removable batteries and they're also compatible with standard AA cells, so you can just swap them out and keep the show going. That's something we don't really get with the compact 2.4 GHz systems, again because of their small size. However, the design of the Saramonic Air charging case is uniquely done in a way that helps you keep an eye on your charge. A huge window on the lid lets you peek at your charge status even when the lid is closed, as well as a numerical readout for how much charge the case itself is holding reserve. It's probably the highest quality case I've ever held of any 2.4 GHz mic system. This is a metal case. The accessories available for each of these systems are also slightly different because of their slightly different use cases. For the Saramonic Air, this is designed to output audio directly to your smartphone or camera, so you do have this very graceful swappable connector for either a Type-C phone connector or this MI shoe adapter for a cableless connection with Sony cameras. For the K9, you get 3.5mm or XLR output cables, as well as color-coded label tags for identifying your two transmitters. Also, in addition to outputting straight into a camera, the K9 is also designed to be used by sound recordists on bigger productions. So instead of going straight into a camera, it would also likely be going into a field recorder with the receiver being mounted inside an audio bag or an audio cart. Something super neat Saramonic has done for this is introduce a secondary display on the top of the receiver for the recordist to glance down at. You can customize it to show bigger audio levels or bigger signal levels, but this difference in workflow would bring me to the last difference I want to talk about between these two systems. The Saramonic Air works best for workflows requiring minimal post effort. That's why compared to the K9, you do have more options for audio processing built into the Air. There's built-in noise cancellation, for example, which can be set to strong or weak just by pressing a dedicated button on the receiver. There's also a built-in limiter to suppress any peaks just in case someone decides to shout all of a sudden, as well as 3 EQ profiles, again so your video can go live with minimal post-processing required for your audio. It's a different approach over on the K9. The audio coming out of this is expected to be worked on in post-production. So in this sense, the approach is to preserve the original recording as much as possible. So the only sort of processing you will see in the K9's menu is a simple low-cut filter. That's it. The transmitters can also record internally in 32-bit float, so you can always have this very safe fallback recording before it even gets transmitted over the air. It supports timecode to help with synchronizing these, and the recordings are stored on a removable microSD card. Something important to note about this feature is the international model of the K9 supports recording and transmitting simultaneously. K9 models sold and operated within the US, however, cannot transmit and record simultaneously due to a patent. Also, just as a bit of a fun behind-the-scenes info, I am wearing a lavalier microphone that's being plugged in to this Saramonic K9 transmitter. So this is transmitting into this receiver here, which is outputting that signal into a sound recorder that's just off screen here. But you can also see this red light is on. That's the record light on my transmitter. That means this is also recording 32-bit float internally into that micro SD card in there. So if, say, I were to unplug this cable connecting my receiver to my sound recorder, I would completely lose audio on. But I still have the internal recording on my transmitter here. So this has been the Saramonic Air and the Saramonic K9, both very capable wireless mic systems from their 2.4 GHz and UHF range. I'll leave links below to both these systems for you to check whichever one out that might better suit your needs. And with that, I'll see you around.